All right, so the next game we're going to be talking about is Krull, which was nominated by @Electricviking, and it was developed and published by Atari for the Atari 2600. Earliest release date and territory is sometime in a magical land that was 1983. So this is a licensed game, is it not? It's based on some kind of movie film for theaters?
Yes. It is based on the single greatest film ever made, Krull.
Hey, hang on. You sure not talking RoboCop here?
RoboCop. Jesus Christ.
You hipster son of a... I'll give you this plateau for now, but we'll come to blows later.
Sotenga, I am legally not allowed to be a hipster because I'm about to talk about Krull. Okay?
All right.
Ain't nothing hipster about Krull. Or the game adaptation of it.
Games.
Games, yes. Correct. This was... there was kind of a similar-ish version developed in parallel by Gottlieb, I believe.
So what made you decide to pick the 2600 version, not the arcade version, of Curiosity?
Well, I hadn't played the arcade version as a major part of it. The other reason I chose the 2600 version of Krull is because it is, A, I think the first 2600 version game we've covered, and B, it's fucking Krull, mate. Like, what do you want? Like, it's a game based on a movie where a man gets a magic throwing star with the help of the guy who plays Thufir Hawat and fights a giant disembodied head at the end, which is a nice throwback to Zombie Nation, I guess, in a weird way.
Wow, continuity.
Yeah, he's not really a disembodied head. He has a body, I guess. Krull's a strange film, and I love it. It's it's like an example of an absolute like box office bomb that just spent like damn near $50 million getting made and lost about 2/3 of that in box office receipts. It's
Did you say raised a sharp bone boomerang star? Sold, greenlit.
Yeah, I cannot believe they spent the amount of money they did on this film, excepting for the fact that I think, so the scuttlebutt for years was that this was initially going to be Dungeons & Dragons the movie. Gary Gygax apparently at some point later in his life said that he had never been contacted in his capacity as the guy who made Dungeons & Dragons from anyone making Krull about like, hey, could we make this a D&D film? So that's apparently bunkum, but there's a sort of like weird advanced D&D, like early second edition vibe to everything in this film. It's like a weird mix of like low fantasy kind of Favored and the Grey Mouser meets like Spelljammer vibe, where you've got like castles and kings and horses and deserts and aliens with laser muskets invading. The entire fiction is nuts. I kind of want to go back and find like every version of it that's ever been made. I just want the Betamax version of it and the Laserdisc version. I want everything.
You made me want to go see it, so success there.
Yeah. It's a very interesting like visual aesthetic they went for. Like again, like I like things that go for an aesthetic, and it's definitely not consistent, but they went for something.
Let me ask you this: how are they on the weird hat factor?
Not a lot of hats.
Really?
Yeah.
Because that's kind of a mainstay of these like sword and sandal barbarian type.
The only real hat I can think of is actually worn by none other than Francesca Annis, a.k.a. the Lady Jessica from Dune, which leads into my other point about Krull, is between that and an appearance from the aforementioned Freddie Jones, who was Thufir Hawat, as Ynir the Old One. It's kind of a tech rehearsal for Dune.
God.
Also features a very, very young Leslie Nielsen and Robbie Coltrane.
You mean Liam Neeson, not Leslie Nielsen.
Liam Neeson, God damn it, yes.
Yeah, Leslie Nielsen was already an old man at that point.
I've been drinking. So anyway, Krull, you should watch the film.
Before you get into this, let me. I'm going to describe the game that I played.
Please.
And you're going to explain to me how that relates to the movie, because I haven't seen the movie. The game is one of these classic, Atari 2600, like, I guess, 2-stage or like different segment type games.
4 screens, I think it is.
Yeah, the first segment is you're like on a kind of field, and there's like a castle at the top, and there's I guess a woman next to you, and you like start walking forward, and then the woman gets knocked back, and then a bunch of dudes come out, and I guess you're attacking them, and then when you lose that, you go to like a giant spider web. So at what point in the movie does that happen?
This film starts with basically a political marriage between kingdoms on a planet who are uniting after like years of fighting to fight off a kind of vague alien menace. First screen, okay, so it's the wedding, and then aliens show up. And the aliens have laser guns, and you have, like, a sword. So, okay, alright. The first screen is just basically a screen to build up points for no particular reason, because as far as I know, you don't gain lives at any point, so it's just kind of a score attack thing. Between that and the spiderweb scene, there is riding across a field, which is supposed to be, like, about 40 minutes of the film, basically, which accounts for, like, leaving the castle, meeting, like, the Obi-Wan Kenobi figure, who is the guy who's Thufir, finding the glaive, which happens in, like, a lava pit in a mountain. Eventually you wind up in the web scene, which actually is not the main hero, it's Thufir Hawat in the film, maneuvering across this, like, cocoon, web-infested cavern to go talk to, like, an old version of Lady Jessica in what would be, like, the white rectangle at top of the spider web in the game. So
I forgot to mention the white rectangle.
Yeah, the white rectangle at the top is where Lady Jessica is, but she's not Lady Jessica. She's another character.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, so you solve the puzzle of the spiderweb cocoon scene, which leads to kind of a reverse motion version of the horse screen 2, let's call it, to get to the final boss, which is basically kind of an alleyway or Yar's Revenge kind of thing.
This is our first Atari 2600 Atari VCS game that we've ranked, I believe. Mm-hmm. Although we did rank Zookeeper, which is one of the most VCS-esque of early arcade games. But that one's really, really good. Yeah, go ahead.
Talk real quick about my thoughts on this game.
Sure.
I do find this game pretty technically impressive. I mean, it's an Atari 2600 game that has multiple levels. I mean, that's a pretty nice achievement on its own. It's got a title screen. It's got what you could technically consider a boss fight. So, I mean, those are all pretty nice to have for 1983. But really, what really kills it for me is the web screen, because that's pretty much where I just lose all my lives without fail, because it's really hard to figure out what exactly you're supposed to do at first, and even then, it's really hard to actually move around, do the way the webs move, and push you back.
I mean, you could read the manual.
Yeah, so Cal's been hitting me over the head with this, but the manual does just basically explain that web scene pretty well. Basically, you just need to get to the top of the web, get to the white rectangle, whereas Lady Jessica is hiding, and a little beacon will start blinking on the web, and you just get Thufir Hawat to the blinking white light, and just keep, like, moving the joystick in that direction, and you will maneuver back to screen 2 and ride your horse to the castle wherein the final boss is, unless the day has ended and a new day has started, at which point you need to go back. Because, by the way, there's a day-night cycle in this game. That's indicated in the top of the screen. There's, like, a lot going on in this game.
There's way more than needed to be going on, which makes it a very impressive movie license title.
Yeah, it's a why kind of... There's a lot going on, but why?
I'm actually wondering if there are, in terms of home console games, like games with functional day-night cycles. I don't know if it's a day-night cycle, but it's definitely a day cycle. Time is progressing.
Does that tie into the movie at any point? Is there some sort of shifting daytime thing?
Like, they need to get to, like, the location of the villain, who's just called the Beast. His castle moves every day, so Thufir goes into the web. Lady Jessica is like, oh yeah, the castle's over here now, and they're like, shit, we have, like, 5 minutes. We need to get on these horses made out of fire and ride them across, like, the sky, basically, to get to this castle and get inside of it and kill aliens with a glaive.
This is a good movie and a good game. You know, both of these things sound awesome.
Such a good movie. Mm-hmm. Guys, Krull's really good.
I don't think I made clear that I actually have seen Krull before, and I'm going to lay down a hot take. I like Don Coscarelli, but this film is objectively better than The Beastmaster. I had to get it out there, you know, just in case there's a nice little objective comparison. But as for the game itself, I do like it, even though like 80% of the time you spend is in the giant web screen. And I do have to ask, why'd they make everything so obnoxiously bleepy on that level?
Yeah, it's the sound is rough, and the platforming over the. For those of you, let's paint a word picture. Picture a spider web drawn in, like, you know, Atari graphics, and then on top of that you've got kind of moving white bands that are sort of expanding in, like, European quotation mark patterns that you need to be jumping over, and the platforming is just not up to the task of doing this, basically.
Well,
we are talking...
It tries to have, like, some sort of, like, pseudo-physics-y wave sort of thing going on. There's, like...
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, and if you get caught up in there, it basically will just push you back to the outer edge of a screen, and that's a timed sequence as well. So in the top right, you've got a hourglass dripping down. If that hourglass drips down, a spider just murks you in about 5 seconds. So you got to be kind of on your shit in there, or it will go bad for you.
But it's just an Atari 2600 game. This is pretty reasonable. Like,
this game, if you were to play through it perfectly, is about 3 minutes long, tops. Like, if you execute everything perfectly, you will literally finish this game in no more than about 3-4 minutes.
To be fair, you're not really meant to finish most Atari 2600 games because they're all about the score.
Yeah, this is accurate. So having something you can finish 3-4 minutes with someone who likes to finish things, that's kind of neat. It's like... I actually haven't, because the last boss is kind of a son of a bitch.
Well, you have to collect glaives,
I'm also
right?
good at games. Yeah, so this leads me to the other problem. Like, I think the spiderweb sequence sucks. It's pretty rough. Even when you play it on the first of 4 difficulty settings where the webs just aren't moving at all, still isn't great. The other thing that sucks is the screen 2, which again repeats twice. As you're riding horses, you will ride over glaives and little dudes in the ground who are like extra lives. They're like the Mega Man heads. But they're totally random. So you could have a sequence where you're playing through this game and wind up with no extra lives and 1 glaive, or you could wind up with 1 extra life and 2 glaives. But it's a quick time event. So as you're riding over these icons, you've got like a fraction of a second to hit the only button on the Atari controller to pick up either of these items. And if you don't, that sucks. Too bad.
And for me, most of the time, it didn't really work. I thought I was hitting the button time, but I guess I wasn't, so I can grab anything. So like, one glaive.
That was my problem too. Is I think it's kind of a shitty quick time event. Like it is. It's a quick time event, and it sucks. The net effect of that is you can get to the final boss with a glaive and like 3 lives. What you're meant to do with this glaive is throw it at a wall and effectively play, again, like kind of Arkanoid or Alleyway or something, and break through this wall, have the princess come out through this wall, land on you, and give you the ability to throw a fireball into a boss who is kind of moving between you and this container the princess is in. Kind of like Yar's Revenge-ish, but like reverse Yar's Revenge. But if that glaive misses the wall, you fail to catch it as it bounces back, or it hits the boss, it's gone. And then you've got no glaives and like 3 lives. It sucks.
Yeah, it's hard, but it is doable. I have actually done it before, but it will take you like, I don't know, at least 20 tries to really get everything down pat. Thankfully, this game being as short as it is, I am impressed that this does have a definitive ending to it, back before like Super Mario Brothers was a thing. This game's pretty technically well put together, just kind of hard to actually play in some respects. Also, I love when you go down the wrong way. You go down the castle the wrong way, you totally screw exiting the web sequence, and then the horses just like stop midway in before they turn around. It's like, crap. And then you lose a life automatically somehow. Because it
plays one of the 2 pieces of music in this game, which is the bridal entrance theme, like the first 4 notes of it, and then effectively oh, you suck, gone. Like, you get da-da-da-da, or you get...
Yeah, very, very Atari type thing.
Yeah.
Not every game can be Pitfall 2, sadly. That game has some actually legit good music.
It's a relatively late actual life of the 2600 game. I think it's not too far removed from something like Return of the Jedi in terms of, like, they certainly did cram a lot of ideas into this card.
Yeah.
And I think they got a lot of mileage out of the Krull film and the incredible plot therein.
I'm one of those people who has played a lot of early 80s Atari 2600 licensed games, and I can say that a lot of them are like that, where they break up the game into different segments, because that's basically the only way to squeeze additional gameplay out of it. Yeah. And sometimes I feel like Atari developers would do that because they felt like, well, if the kids don't like this one, they'll like this one. They don't like the spider, they'll like the horses. They don't like the... So I don't...
Well, one of these kids loves the Speedo guy.
No, but it's funny every time.
One of the things about the Atari 2600 is to remember how technically deficient the system was. It had almost
it's like
nothing. It was basically made to play Pong. Like, it's like they took something that was supposed to play Pong exclusively and somehow just broke that thing to make it do other things, which
Yeah.
means
It's what Jeremy Parrish keeps coming back to. It's like the Famicom was designed to play a good game of Donkey Kong, and the 2600 was designed to play a good game of Pong.
and
that's really about it.
combat.
yeah. So what the problem was, of course, is that basically you had to reload the screen to put more shit in the game, basically. So they went, well, if you have to reload the screen anyway, make it a new game, because that's the only thing that we can really do.
I think it's interesting because that's something that, although arcade games did sometimes do that, like Tron, I guess, has like different modes, or was Tron the one that they just split it up into different games, I think, entirely? Because there's like the light cycle game and the discs
I think that Tron is split up, but there's several shmup type games that have, there's always the bonus game in like tons and tons of early 80s games have like bonus.
Like, for example, there's a game based on the TV show MASH.
Yeah.
Hey, I think my brother played that on an early computer where it was like, if it actually had a few voice clips, and if you like blew it on surgery, you hear, you win a few, you lose a few.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, it was what it was. I mean, here's how MASH worked, just to give you an idea of what these games are like, what you can expect. MASH is a two-player competitive game. It's either you versus the other player, you versus the computer, and you are in a race on the first screen, a race to pick up the most number of wounded people and bring them back to your hospital. And then once that segment ends, you've got an interstitial segment, which is like, it looks like it's kind of like the board game Operation, where it's got like a little like tubby dude in kind of profile, or silhouette rather, and then instead of innards, he's got like some kind of weird maze etched into his body, and you're supposed to navigate. You navigate the cursor over and find the bullet, and then you have to pull the bullet out by going through the maze without touching the walls. So to say that, like, just so we don't get off, I'm not saying that like Krull isn't innovative or anything, but like this is kind of a normal thing that a lot of games were doing at the time, and I think we can judge. It helps us look at Krull in context, because it stayed, I think, like, you know, the bullet pulling out thing is interesting, but it's not really like much of a, you know, it doesn't feel like a game unto itself. Whereas for an Atari game in 1983, like the spiderweb thing, that in 1979 would have been an entire game, you know. So to us, it seems like nothing, but at the time, that would have seemed like to play like, oh, it's like a whole different game, and you know, and the horse thing was like its own game. And
certainly
stuff like that.
The intro and the outro of the game, the wedding segment and the boss segment, you know, they're both like, you know, they're close enough to, you know, you could say Breakout or Space Invaders or anything like that. Like they all have that kind of.
Well, we were comparing it to Yar's Revenge. I mean, Yar's Revenge is just the Yar's Revenge thing. Yeah, it's the big. That's all it is. You don't like beat that stage and then you go on to a different kind of Yar's Revenge.
I guess the question is if it's better to have one scene that's done particularly well, or it's better just try to go for a bunch of things and hope one of them works, like Krull did.
When it came to the 2600, it was very difficult for the games to be anything but okay. You can tell me that the 2600 has great games on it, but certainly for the time, you know, when you got the Atari 2600, your choice was the Atari 2600, or really like a couple other systems that were kind of similar, but not
electric.
Yeah, like, I mean, I get it, you know, like
Magnavox Odyssey 2.
When your choice is like of that minimal, then this is, you know, these machines kicked ass, but most 2600 games, they're not really great by any modern.
I don't know. I mean, if we were to get to ranking this game, if Yar's Revenge were already on our list, this would be well below it. Like, and that is a one-screen game. Actually, I think Death Star Battle, Return of the Jedi, I think I would put that above Krull as well.
That was a great game, surprisingly.
That's, you know, 2 screens, I think. Some of the best games of the time, I think, were effectively one-screen games. Like, River Raid is a one-screen game. Enduro basically is a one-screen game.
Flak Attack, one-screen game.
Pressure Cooker?
Thing is, I don't really want to be that harsh on this game, because there's ambition, there's a effort. They were trying to do something really expansive and cool, I'd say.
Yeah, considering the law of averages on licensed titles, even today, this one is still decent for a licensed game.
Yeah.
You got to wonder whether Atari bought the license for this back when it was like, oh, Krull's going to be the next big thing. This is going to be huge. We better get on the ground floor of Krull. And then they're watching the movie and they're like, oh my God, what are we going to do with this? Like, how do we make a game out of this? I don't know. The spiderweb thing? Yeah, but that's not the main guy in the. I don't care. Like, that's the thing. It's the thing that looks like a game. Okay,
so Zookeeper was already invoked, and I'm curious what you guys think about this game relative to Zookeeper.
Oh, it's worse than Zookeeper by
Yeah,
easy.
I had a
Okay,
lot more
it's
fun
good.
with Zookeeper.
Just-
It's not as fast paced.
Good sanity check. Okay.
Okay, well, let me drag out, because I love it, Knights of the Crystallion, which is a blown-out, insane person in terms of combining a bunch of things together like a madman.
There's another game where you play it and you're like, I don't know what this is supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be doing, who I am. I can't describe this to anyone. You got to wonder, like, some of these games are so abstract and weird. Like, if they had like hotlines to call, like the Nintendo hotline, like, all right, I've got a problem with Krull. Okay, tell me what's your problem. Well, I'm on the thing that's like just a bunch of lines. I think it's a spider web. Oh, you're on the spider web stage. Yeah. And I'm trying to get to the glowing white rectangle. Is that the goal? Or, yeah, that's the goal.
I gotta say, I do.
Just based on your description, Knights of the Crystallion might be in the same universe as
Makes sense, actually.
Well, I gotta start a fanfic now.
Yeah.
Knights of the Crystallion might be like a pseudo sequel to Krull for all we know. Like, they seem.
Wait, Knights of the Krull Stallion. How about that? Huh?
Hey, what about Octopus? Is it better than Octopus?
No. Octopus. No, it's not better than Octopus. Octopus is a game that makes sense, and look.
Yeah. Just for the spiderweb sequence alone, Octopus is probably better. That's
It's not like Octopus is like has a current that's constantly dragging you to the edge of the screen.
Yeah.
I mean, am I correct in that
I have to put it above.
It's basically several other games kind of mashed together to its separate screens? Like, essentially, it is like, like first stage is very Space Invaders E, and then I don't know where the spiders stage is from, and then the last stage is
compared to the other crap on the market at the time, it's maybe impressive because it's like 4 kinds of crap.
I'm looking at eSWAT, and I'm thinking about eSWAT because, like, basically I think eSWAT's great until you get into the eSWAT suit.
I think you're crazy for thinking that. Just
that suit is terrible and looks like shit, but eSWAT is a really good game otherwise.
Are you talking about the suit in the arcade game or the Genesis game? Because the arcade game suit looks worse than the Genesis suit.
Look, man, again, I like eSWAT, and I like the Sega Genesis, and I am one to be a fan of eSWAT, but that suit is dumb.
I like it. It's so dumb, man. It's like Krull.
Krull is pretty dumb, but like that, I don't think it goes too much farther below eSWAT. Like it's
okay.
That's the range of it.
So when you get down to this territory, just to give the listeners an idea of where we are here, which is a phrase I've said so many times that if there's ever a Xerxes action figure, you know what's going on the back of the. It's one of the buttons on my shoulder blades is going to say.
Click.
But
do it.
I would say you're down in the territory of stuff that is like, it was a valiant effort, I guess. Could be like the name. So you're down in we've got Technocop, eSWAT, Road Rash, Haunting, starring Poltergeist, Tale of the Sun, Riven, Nightshade, Live a Live, and so on. I think this is probably the right territory because I do, although I my point about talking about the MASH game is just to say, like, a lot of games from this time period were doing this like multiple screen, like, let's see whatever, like we'll give the kids all the games, You see, that was normal, but I do feel like Krull is more playable in a sense. Like MASH isn't, in a way, they're like tighter, more focused games, but they're not quite as.
I think Krull's pretty fun. It's not, if you had have gotten this game when it came out, you wouldn't have been disappointed. You'd be like, "Yeah, this is fun. I like it."
Can you imagine a 12-year-old kid excited about the film Krull getting this game?
I can remember being a 12-year-old kid who was excited about the movie Stargate. So yeah, pretty much.
God bless you, Xerxes. I pitched this right between eSWAT and Road Rash.
I'm okay with that.
I'm going to have to put it below Road Rash because there's nobody on a motorcycle with a giant chain whip.
You know what? I agree.
But you don't get the glaive.
Nuclear, how what?
But you're bringing your knowledge of the movie into the game. In the game,
you can be a man who jumps over a white line,
and you're going towards a glowing rectangle.
But you do get the glaive. The glaive is on the screen, and you throw it, and it bounces. You get that. You do.
Okay.
Glaive.
That's true.
You can stab a bunch of aliens who shoot laser muskets.
I will say straight, like, I find the like the 2600 stylings. They are they do tickle my fancy a bit. I like I like that insane degree of abstraction. This game has gorgeous 2600 style rainbow effects where things just palette cycle like vertically. It's it is whacked out. But
the Beast's castle looks dope in this game.
It is a cool, this game, there was a lot of effort, but, Road Rash, I'll give it, it is, it's pretty good. It's not Road Rash 2, but it's decent.
I mean, the good thing about Road Rash is that it sells itself on the concept alone, whereas Krull, you have to have the Krull name, such as it is, backing it up, I guess. Because otherwise, you're kind of like, I don't know what this is. Yeah. Also, the thing about Krull is it's got that opening stage, which I think, Jeff, you just acknowledged, serves no purpose other than to build up the score and does nothing.
Yeah, it's
an inscrutable cipher of a gameplay scenario.
If they hadn't have included that, you wouldn't have been able to follow along with the story of Krull.
Yeah, it wouldn't motivate you to go back to...
Empire Strikes Back Atari 2600 game, one of the best Atari games ever, one of the best Atari movie games ever, easily, if not the best. And it is one segment of the movie. It's like 20 minutes of the movie at most.
But it's the right one.
But it's the most gamifiable part of that movie. There's not like a separate level where after you beat like the giant Imperial walkers, then there's the like, I'm going to balance stones with this Muppet kind of level. You know, it just does the thing. There's no like kissing your sister mini game.
There's no sitting at stack to tank mini game.
Yeah, like
help me, Dr. Roll.
Right, exactly.
Let's say if Krull was just the, only had, like, the beast fight, that was the only stage it had, would it have been better, would you say? Because I don't think so.
But that to me is just an indictment of the game.
Yeah.
Like, it's 4 lesser games when it should have just been one good game.
It's really more like 3, because the side-scrolling horse riding is more of an intermission than a game.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I'm sitting here being able to write off about half this game as bad, the first scene as pointless, and the fourth screen as kind of unnecessarily obtuse and difficult, and requiring dumb luck in aforementioned screens. So,
and the game is like 8 bytes.
Yeah,
it's like nothing.
Okay, I can concede this going under Road Rash and above Haunting starring Poltergeist, if for no other reason than it breaks up a solid block of 3 Silent Fanatic nominations.
Okay, all right, yes, true. We don't want to encourage that guy.
Yeah.
No, he's great, but yeah. It's important to acknowledge what other people have already said, which is that in terms of the absolute tidal wave of dreck that was the 1983 offerings for the 2600, this goes below every game Activision published that year. But, you know, I mean, it's not E.T., you got to give it that.
E.T. isn't a bunch of other actually significantly worse games. I mean, the basement of Atari 2600 games is a place you do not want to go.
This kind of is the basement, too. E.T. was an 82 game. Like, at this point, the bottom had fallen out. Like, I think that this game is as good as it is kind of impressive in its own way, because in 1983, like, this was like the home consoles are basically dying in the United States in this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, even Atari as a publisher or developer, rather, this is just about the point where there are new talent that arrived after all the good people left and formed their own companies where they'd make actual money and get credit for what they did.
Yeah.
This is the point where their new talent is starting to understand what the hell they're doing. That's a thing, and that's good.
I do want to sign off that this game, it does, as much as, it's 4 disconnected or whatever scenes, it does feel a little bit like a story, a little bit like a quest. Like, it does manage to feel that, and I think that's nice. You do have the stage, and it's like, okay, this is part of the journey. This is the adventure that Krull goes on. It's not completely disconnected. You actually do feel like, the woman, I don't know the name of the character in it, gets kidnapped. You got to find where the villain is. Then you go to his tower and you beat him up. I mean, that's connected. It's pretty good.
To tie it all the way back, like, it does feel very, very vaguely like a specifically like advanced Dungeons and Dragons era D&D kind of thing. You go on a weird fantasy sci-fi adventure. It's just not on a PC. It's on a 2600, and they did what they could.
Okay, so Bobinator has already updated the list, which means it's done.
Great.
He's like, stop it.
I hold true power here.
So Krull for the Atari 2600 goes right underneath Road Rash, right above Haunting, starring Poltergeist. And thank you, Jeff. I don't think I would have ever played Krull if not for this.